welcome to today's episode. In today's episode, we are diving into the secret behind rapid growth, not just in business but in content creation. My guest, Joseph Drolshagen, is a top business coach, mindset expert, and creator of the SMT Method. I think you want to stick around to really know what that method means. A proven system that helps entrepreneurs, professionals break through subconscious barriers to achieve massive success. He's been featured on Fox, CBS, and NBC, and was named top business coach in America 4 years in a row. If you feel like you're stuck, struggling to grow your content, or hitting invisible roadblocks, this is the episode for you. Welcome, Joseph Drolshagen. Did I get the name correct?
You did well with it. Drolshagen. Yes.
Okay.
But I'm really excited to be here with you.
Yeah. Before I start asking the questions about content, I like for my audience to get to know who they are listening to. And so the question I ask is, what's the story behind what you do and how did you get started?
Honestly, the way I got started with this is in my early 20s. I started noticing things like I really struggled a lot from growing up in Detroit, Michigan, but I really struggled a lot. In my early 20s, if something came easy to me, I thought I didn't deserve it because I didn't work hard enough for it. And I would let those opportunities pass. And so my life has been in a constant study, experimental mode of learning how to shift out those things, those patterns like that cause limitation, and then instead live through more self-empowerment in the things that I do. And I've been a student of that for almost 4 decades now. And what took me years to figure out now, I'm able to help people with in weeks. And it's just absolutely amazing of all that struggle that went on and the good that gets to come out of it and the people I get to serve.
Yeah, I think your story is alike with many of the entrepreneurs and creators. In an attempt to solve their own problem, they end up finding the recipe and then sharing it with others.
It is one of the things that's really interesting you just said that there, because one of the places where I differ is everybody wants to tell everybody else what they have to do to be successful and their roadmap and the action plans and everything else, but it never works the same for two people. So what works for you to be successful doesn't necessarily work for me, and what works for me wouldn't for you. So where I've really tailored what I do is every individual I serve, I help them find what is that pathway for them. How do we unlock the door? And I'll give you a quick example of that. I've worked with clients. You ever see somebody do a social media live and you can tell they're very uncomfortable. They don't like doing it. They don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And that shows in their post, in that video that they did, the live that they're doing and stuff. And now you ever seen somebody who's like, they're at home, they're in their wheelhouse when they're speaking live like that. And we end up watching that person longer than we do the first person. The first person, I turn it off because I feel bad for them. So even doing things like that, doing lives and doing things like that, it doesn't work for everybody. Some people it resonates for, and it really turns on that attraction factor and brings about things. And then other people, it's not their bailiwick. So don't do those things. And that's what I mean, where I look for that uniqueness for every individual I'm working with and help them develop systems of accelerating habits that work for them. It may not anybody else, but it works for them. And then we find more time to do those things. And all of a sudden we start seeing our audience like just compounding and growing and things happening like that, versus all the efforting we do to try to do the A, B's, and C's that people tell us we have to do.
Yeah, so true. Like there's so many advice, so many tips, everybody, like so many things one could be doing. At the end of the day, what that leads to is overwhelm, and we end up doing nothing.
Well, and that's a big part of that leads to procrastination, isn't it? Right there in what you just said.
Yeah, because 1,000 things you could be doing. You don't even know which one you should be doing. At the end of the day, you just end up doing nothing.
Right. So when I can work with somebody and I can help them develop those systems for their life, and then we start finding more time to do it, all of a sudden, instead of being in that confused state of I don't know what to do, now all of a sudden they have actions that they take, and they're more enjoying the actions that they're taking, which brings about greater results. It attracts more to them in doing that.
Yeah. Yes, so true. Yeah, that's like relating this to a podcast, for example. There are a lot of persons that will do great as solo podcasters, just talking and sharing and just saying what they feel like saying, and the audience love that. And then there are other people who they really love talking and having conversation with other persons, and when they start having conversation with persons, you just feel the energy right there. But I could say maybe because the method that worked for me in the past was doing interview with people. I would say, well, if you start a podcast, you have to do an interview show. Or if you do a solo episode, you're wasting your time. I'm like, dude, really? But at the end of the day, we just end up giving advice that irrespective of the fact that it worked for you, it doesn't mean that it will work for this other person you're giving it to.
Absolutely right. And what happens, what we have so often in people that help people get their businesses started and going and everything else, is that they found a pathway that worked for them. And so then all of a sudden they hung a sign that says, I'm a coach, and they started teaching other people to do exactly what they did. But less than 1% of the people following that ever achieve anywhere near what the person who developed it did, because they developed their plan. See, when I work with somebody, I tell them it doesn't matter what I did to get to where I'm at. What matters is that I'm able to help you find your pathway into that. And now we build your business. We see it explode with people and growing and monetizing and all that stuff. And now you have your business plan as far as your roadmap that you can take to any endeavor that you take on, and it'll still apply because it's yours, about you.
Yeah, so true. Like at the end of the day, when you're coaching, it's about the person you're coaching, it's about the customer, it's about the audience. It's about them. That's who you're trying to serve. And as much as you might have the experience, you might have done it, that's not the question. The question is now, can you help us do it, right? And then sometimes we just give old advice that doesn't really work, irrespective of what the audience is going through. I like that approach.
Yes. Yeah, and one of the things with that is then as we step into it, so often the programming we have is like, if you want something, find someone who has what you want, do what they did and get it. Well, ultimately what that's saying under the surface is, don't be you, be that person, be more like that person, do what they did, and you'll get. But our power, our individual power to impact lives, to grow businesses, to whatever it is ours. It's unique to every one of us. So if I'm trying to go out there and be like you in order to build my podcast audience, it's not going to work for me because I'm not you.
Yeah. I think I read, there's a book I read, it's called The Unfair Advantage. It says that everybody has their own unfair advantage. And then sometimes when we try to copy people who have done what we want, or the kind of success we want, what we fail to realize is there are certain things, certain unfair advantage that they have that made them successful by doing exactly what they did. And if we try to copy them, we might not have those unfair advantage, and we might neglect the unfair advantage that we have. And so we end up not playing to our strengths. Instead, we just look at someone else. There's certain things that are not visible that might make them successful.
Yeah, and there's a lot of invisibilities. When I actually walked away as a vice president of sales in corporate America after helping organizations in bankruptcy get back to profitability and all the stuff entailed in that and stuff. I walked away to start this organization that I have today, the IFGT Coaching Consulting, and it's all about helping businesses rapidly scale. It's about getting into alignment before we ever step out into taking action. We get alignment, which within the SMT method, it's called dynamic visioning. So we get in mind that endpoint of what it looks like, what it feels like. We start picturing ourselves in that life. And as we do that, all of a sudden the actions will start showing up so much easier for us for that unique journey. And then we take those actions and we move into it. I think I mentioned we develop systems of accelerating habit unique to the individual. And it's things that light us up in doing it, like those people doing the lives that are at home in their wheelhouse, doing those. And then we find more time to do those things. And all of a sudden, building a business, instead of being a huge pain and grind and everything else, it becomes enjoyable. The pathway, the journey that where we want to get to becomes enjoyable.
Yeah, just to follow up on the first question I did ask is, your work focuses on subconscious mindset training, right? So the
Yes.
question I want to ask is, what's the biggest mindset block that holds content creators back from growing fast?
It's the fallacy. I mean, there's multiples of them, really. Fear
Okay.
is one of them. It lays, across the board. But which fear is only we're doing something we haven't done before, and it's uncomfortable. Every client I work with, I tell them you have to be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable because we're going to do things you haven't done before. But the other part of it is that mentality of somebody. We can join a group or we can join this or join that and buy a book, and they'll tell us how to do it, the quickest way to get there, the overnight. I think you even mentioned that, the get rich quick schemes and things like that on how we're going to tenfold our business and everything else following what worked for somebody else. And they have testimonials and all the stuff. But really, that's a fallacy because our pathway is unique. It's unique to each one of us based on our conditioning, our programming within our subconscious. It's unique depending on what we want to achieve. It's unique even to the resources that we have available to us. There's people that grow overnight their audience, but nobody will say that they have an influencer in their family or friend or network or something that was able to get them 500,000 leads into it right away. And when you take programs with things like that, they don't come out and tell you that. So it's really based on all those ingredients there that make us us. And as far as here's ultimately what happens is we have our programming within our subconscious mind, right? Our past, our experiences, what we've been told, what we've experienced, even what somebody close to us experienced and told us, and it becomes ingrained in that network of our subconscious. And the important part about that is the subconscious is what triggers the brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So if I have programming, just like I shared earlier, if I have programming in my subconscious that says it's got to be really hard in order for it to be, for me to be worthy of it, and something comes along easy, of course my brain waves to take the actions aren't going to happen because I have that disconnect there. So the SMT method of going in, identifying, and it's geared to identify those limiting beliefs, that programming, so we can then quickly shift that and open up the avenue to greater results happening.
Yeah. I think while you were expatiating on that question, I remember there's a question that one of my audience asked me, and sometimes they feel like they're not good enough. As you said earlier on, they feel like they don't have what it takes. They feel like they're not an expert. They feel like they are not qualified, to share anything, right? And they struggle with finding the courage to stand and to put themselves out there regardless of it. And so for them, they are like, how do I get past this roadblock? They know it's a problem, but how do I get past it? Right? What would you have to say to them?
Yeah, and that's such a great question. And that's exactly where I come from. I grew up in a very low income family in Detroit, Michigan. And I was told my whole life I was one of 5 children. My mom and dad, worked exhaustively. My dad beat himself up operating heavy equipment, working as many hours as he could, like all this stuff. And I was told my whole life growing up that some people are meant to work with their head and some people are meant to work with their hands. And I was going to work with my hands. So in other words, I was going to be blue collar. And I believed that. And so later in my as I started studying this stuff and trying to understand why is my life so hard, and I started opening those doorways, it's unrealistic, my life. And what's happened is I broke into white collar corporate America, and then I rose the ladder to a vice president of sales. I'm an ordained minister. I have my doctorate in philosophy. I've like even the development of this program, building a multi-million-dollar business, and the whole thing of it should have never happened according to the programming. But there was something within me that I say at my soul level that said, I'm meant for more. And that little thing, as far as it faded out at times, stayed alive. And I'm meant for more, would take the next step and the next step. Even at times when I was like, okay, this stuff's not working, I'm done. At some point, it would pull me back into it. I'm meant for more.
Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that we have to, as much as maybe put post-it notes to always remind ourselves that, because with the overwhelm, with so many voices out there, it might drown that very statement that we're meant for more and we deserve more if we want more.
Yes. And what I had to do in order to change my results, in order to build this business that I now get to operate and have fun with, and getting ready to launch an institute to certify other coaches in it, to expand the footprint of my life works now and even after I'm gone from here. It all started with that understanding of what's not working, that identifying, man, this is not working. My life is way too hard and I'm still not getting results. And through that process is how I ended up eventually over a decade period understanding or coming to understand or even introduced to the subconscious mind. There's a conscious, subconscious, total mindset, how they work interdependently and independently. And that studies has been going on since I was probably 28, 30 years old, through today. And I still continue to study it and stuff. And through that process, again, what took me years and decades to figure out, my clients achieve in weeks now. It's amazing. But it's all about our programming. The subconscious programming leads to our perceptions, and then our perceptions lead to our results. So if I want different results, I have to shift those. I have to shift that my perceptions. And the only way I can truly permanently shift my perceptions is I have to go in and rewire the programming. And thank God for our brain's awesome capacity to rewire itself that's even possible to do.
So the program affects our perception, and our perception affects our results. Wow.
Our perception determines our results.
Our perception determines our results. Now, for me right now, the biggest problem I'm having with the programming right now is that you said we have to go back and change our programming, but here's the problem. For most people, it's a program. It's something that happens in subconscious. We're not even aware that it's happening, that it's influencing our action. And it's how do we know? How do we self-examine or somehow kind of like know that, oh, I'm being affected by programming, and this programming is not exactly working towards my desires, my goals. It's not working for my favor. It's working against me, because I have to recognize that something is wrong with my programming. In order for me to say, okay, now how do I change it? How do I rewire it?
Great question. And the SMT method is geared around every step of it is to bump us up against those limitations, bump up us against that other side, that part that's halting us from achieving what we want to achieve. And so we start becoming aware, because you're absolutely right. We take such habitual actions in our life. We just follow habits. We do the same thing tomorrow that we did today. We brush our teeth the same way. We drive whatever it is, we're just continuing to repeat those patterns and those habits in our life. And so what we need something to disrupt that. And one of the things, even coming out of the gate with the SMT, when we develop what it calls a dynamic vision, is we start bumping up against that, because we're creating a vision that we have no idea how the heck we make it so big. We don't have any idea how we can bring that to fruition. And so in doing that, we start bumping up against those patterns. And then as we bump up against them, we have the tools and through, the coaching and stuff like that we can quickly shift that and start opening up those avenues. And then all of a sudden we take an action and it opens up results. And as soon as somebody gets their first success in that, it's like they're sold. People could be a little bit hesitant about it and things like that. But once you get somebody, help them to achieve a success in doing it, all of a sudden it's like, man, it's lit time. It's time to go,
Yeah. No, thank you so much for that. In a short while, I would ask you about the SMT method. But before I ask you that, there's a question I want to prepare the way. The question is, many content creators, they feel like they're already doing everything. They're doing everything and they feel like they're doing everything right. But they're not growing, they're not seeing results, they're not getting conversions, they're not making sales, they're not making money. Nothing, none of those are desirable metrics that one would want from a business, right? So what are some of the subconscious patterns, would you say, could be keeping them stuck?
Yeah. Well, typically, and I'll say any business, but especially for this type of business, like digital, type of business and things like that and stuff. What happens when we're taking all the actions that we know to take and it's not working? What does typical person do?
Blame the system.
Well, they take more action. They work harder. They put more effort, more time, more hours into it, right? I mean, that's what I see. And so we have these, the guys out there that are hearing this right now, that you're spending so much of your time trying to do all of these things to get your business to grow and you're not seeing results. It's because you're not aligned with the results. Once you align with the results, you won't have to do but a portion, a percentage of those actions and see your business thrive and take off and grow. But until you get to that point of getting that alignment, it's just going to be continual, massive actions, exhaustive efforts, and all that stuff that for a long time for businesses was taught. That's what you need to go through. You need to trade off your life in order to have a successful business. And it's BS. It's not true. You don't have to do that. But if you don't get the alignment in place first, and I'll tell you, I failed so many times at so many businesses trying to just jump in and do all the stuff people said to do and I could think to do and find to do and everything else. And it just didn't work. And I'd end up walking away or closing down that business. Now, this one here, it's 12 years old or something. I've served over 700 clients over the past decade, and it just continues to grow on its own now. My audiences continue to grow as I'm loving what I'm doing and I'm getting to speak in conversations like this. I'm getting to coach people. I'm getting to do lives and other things that fit me or my system of accelerating habits. I get to do that more often. I'll tell you, there's times I'll come in my office here and I'll have, client sessions, podcasts, different things like that. And then I'll go home, go to the gym, whatever, eat, and come back at like 8, 9 o'clock at night. And in the room right next to me is my studio, and I'll do recordings, and I'll be there till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I am so excited from getting to spend my time that way and what came of it. I can't sleep when I get home.
Yeah.
It's a different mode of living than it is that exhaustive actions continually nonstop, those action plans, those checking the boxes and doing all the right actions.
Yeah, I feel like when you talk about alignment, there are certain, permit me to use this example, there are certain machines, right, that if you do not calibrate them well to fit a certain frequency, right, what will happen? Okay. You have a background in science, so I'll use this scientific example. In physics, there's what we call resonance frequency. I don't know if you know I've heard of it. Is when two entities they have the same frequency, they're in tune together, right? And it's the reason why sometimes you see people they shout and a particular glass it breaks, right? It's because it's the same frequency. I know that. And what I noticed is that if I think it applies in engineering too. When they are making a bridge, they are always looking at, okay, what's the frequency? If vehicles are matching the bridge, and because there's a particular frequency that if you're not careful, by just cars passing the bridge will just collapse, or by soldiers marching on the bridge will collapse. And the same thing it comes to when in terms of business too. If we don't find the perfect, if we're not able to tune to the perfect thing that that fits us, the alignment and every other thing, what will happen is that we'll start spending our energy, no result, nothing. It's as if we are rolling a boulder up a hill, and it's not really encouraging. It's like slavery, but we're like, well, this is how it's supposed to be. But when it's in perfect fit, it's as if the universe and everything is working for you. You just put in effort and everything just seems to be. It's as if there are forces or unknown forces, because everything is in tune and everything is in alignment.
Yeah. You broke up in part of that. I don't know if it's just my system or if it's overall, but yeah, I got the gist of what you were saying there, and absolutely right. I mean, we live so much of our life like we're robots. If something works for you, I'll take the same actions you took and get the same results. If I'll do this, I'll think the same way, I'll act the same way, I'll do this, and it never works.
When we are not in alignment, what happens is that we're spending so much energy, we're spending so much time, and everything seems like slavery. And the social media and all the numerous voices online, they tell us that that's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be hard. And like you said earlier on at the beginning of the show, that you feel that when something comes easy, like you feel like you don't deserve it, you feel like something is wrong, something is you're not supposed to do that, right? Because we program that if it's not hard, if you're not about to die from doing the thing, then it's not what it. We are doing something wrong. And what you're saying that is that when we have alignment, that of course we will have to work, of course we have to put in energy, but it's just a different feeling.
Well, absolutely. But even when you look at our results, because that's our end game, right? That's what's telling us whether what we're working is, what we're doing is working or not. So if you look at somebody who's working exhaustively and things like that, and they're taking all these actions and they're putting in all the time and missing their family and all this stuff to build a business, and they're not getting the results, then something has to be out of line with what they want.
Yeah.
And found in what most people find, when somebody's in alignment, they don't work as hard. They don't put as much effort and exhaustive, massive actions and things like that into it. It's more of a flow. All of a sudden, things will start showing up instead of getting, 5 to 25 new people following them a day. All of a sudden, it'll jump into the hundreds, or we start experiencing things like that happening over and over again. And a lot of times we call it coincidence, but we can align, we can design our life to work around coincidences continually showing up for us.
Yeah.
But we have to be in alignment to do that. We can't achieve that through any actions or efforts on our part. We have to do the alignment portion.
Very important. You so far in your discussion, you've been making mention of your SMT method. You've talked about how it's about subconscious reprogramming. I'd love for you if you could walk us through, if you could break it down in simple steps for a creator trying to break through some of the plateaus.
Absolutely. And the SMT method, which stands for subconscious mindset training. I did not set out to develop a method that would help people. I was trying to fix my own life.
Yeah.
For the first decade and a half of doing this, I was just trying to fix my life. And as I started understanding these tools, once I, started understanding the total mindset, the subconscious, things like that, and I started focusing on that, and I started doing the exact things that are in the SMT method now, where we call, developing that vision, which then bumps into that programming that's causing limitation, and then started learning and practicing and playing with trying to figure out how to shift that to finally understanding it. At the time, I was in corporate, and I went from running 4,000 to 5,000 miles every single week developing territories and not getting any real results out of it, to traveling less and landing $18 million, $22 million. The largest contract I ever received was a year-over-year $25 million contract that overnight took an organization from $50 to $75 million company. And then I got into managing and things like that and stuff, and started elevating my sales personnel. So I had a record number of people that were top producers on my sales team, and it just started rolling from there. And then I had other people coming to me from other companies and want me to work with their people, business owners, entrepreneurs, all these people. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, but I've been doing this from like my mind. There's no structure to it. And then it was like, okay, maybe I should play with that a little bit. And that's how it came to be the SMT method. And within it, like I told you, right out of the gate, we come out developing what it calls a dynamic vision. And then once we have that vision, all we're really doing is bridging that gap from where we are to where we will be in that vision. In doing so, we have to start looking at that internal programming. We got to take action to bump up against it. And part of that process is we start developing those systems of accelerating habits that are unique to the individual that I'm serving, that's working the program, that's going through the journey of it.
Yeah.
And as we start doing that, it's broken down into two segments. The first one is we learn a bunch of tools and everything else. We develop the vision, learn a bunch of tools on how we can start bumping up against the limitations, and then to identify them, and then to shift those, and then start playing around that other side. Business owners see growth in the first 12 weeks, but then the next 6 months is all about like a hockey stick ramp up, where we just really ramp it up there. And it's not ramping up, working more hours, taking more actions, things like that. It's more getting into that alignment with it. And in doing so is how I've seen companies go from, $300,000 a year, even startup companies from maybe $1,000 a month, who are 2.5 years later now doing between $37,000 to $57,000 a week in revenue. All the way up to like $7.5 million companies that within 12 months are now doing over $22 million a year.
Yeah. That's because one of the things, the internet, there are a lot of nonsense on the internet, to be honest, right? And there's a lot of good on the internet too, but you just have to know which is which. And one of the things people talk about when they mention productivity, they say productivity is also culture, which I disagree with. For me, I feel that productivity is the amount of output you can get for any given input. Right, and which you talked about that you help people not necessarily to work more, but to get more results from the hours you're already putting in, instead of adding more hours to the.
Absolutely. And that's really what it's about. That's to get to everybody who does a business. They want to get to a point where they have more freedom and they have more money and building it up and impact on the world, whatever it is, that they can then enjoy life more. But
Yeah,
we go
yeah.
about it beating ourselves up with massive actions, exhaustive efforts, and we don't see those results because we're blocking it because we're going about it the wrong way. Successful people do not do certain things.
Yeah.
Successful people do things a certain way.
Mm.
And when we start aligning those, we start experiencing a change in our results. And to get there, we had to make a shift in our perception to allow us to get there.
Wow. Like I like that quote. I think that's what we call a social media shareable quotes right there. Successful people do not do certain things. Successful people do things a certain way. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. That's like the highlights of this conversation. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and these things like that I learned. One of the people I really like is, Neil Patel. I mean, he should be
Yeah, I
pretty
know him.
popular in this. Okay,
Yeah.
Neil used to talk about, here's what you have to do, and he would tell you all the things you have to do. But now he talks more about, here's a pool of things, see which one fits you best and do those.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like his method has evolved over time. Like I think there was a time where he was making a lot of YouTube video. This is the exact stuff you have to do. But now he just like he kind of like gives this a lot of advice to say these are some of the opportunities you could take charge of depending on which one works for you.
Yes. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of programs. Like I invested a lot of time, effort, money, things like that into coaching programs to help me build successful businesses back in the day, to help me be successful in sales and corporate sales and things like that. And I learned stuff, but I never changed my results. Later
Yeah.
on, once I understood that my uniqueness and that's really my powerhouse, then I could go back and look at those things and go, this piece works, but the whole package doesn't. And I could incorporate that piece and then go to another one, and all of a sudden now I start seeing changes in my results and I'm taking less actions and working less in order to get those.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. Through the course of the conversation, you've been talking about alignment,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, and you talk about alignment when it comes to success. The question I want to ask is, what does that mean for a content creator, and how can they apply it?
So, and that's a great question. I think there's some people out doing that, and I don't judge anybody for anything. I think there's some people out doing that because they hear I can make a lot of money doing that. And when we do a vision, it's deeper than the money we're going to make doing it.
Yeah.
It's about some kind of change or impact or how we're impacting other people's lives or how doing so is impacting our life, And so when I talk about a dynamic vision, it's all of that is encompassed into that. So we're not just going out and spending all of our time trying to really like become a millionaire. There's more purpose. And when we really dive deep into it, every living, breathing person who wants to experience $1 million, being a millionaire or billionaire, whatever it may be, there's a deeper purposes behind that.
Yeah.
And so the dynamic vision helps us get into understand that, which is what when I say bring alignment to it, that's what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something I want to ask. You keep mentioning dynamic vision. Is there a difference between dynamic vision and regular vision?
Yeah, so here's what I say. There's a vision, right? There's vision boards. There's all kinds of different ways of doing everything. And those have some power to them and stuff. And then there's a vision. A vision has a lot of clarity around what it is we want. What's that end point? A lot of times when in business things and stuff like that, you hear talk about you got to get a clear end point of what you want. And that's powerful. But to bring it to a level of dynamic, we got to be able to put that on. What's it feel like to be that person? What's it like waking up in the morning? What dress? Who do we talk to? What do we watch on TV? Like all these different aspects play into it. So it's not just a visual, it's an all-encompassing where we can feel it, we can see it, we can then from there is so much more power to it.
Yeah. Okay. So dynamic vision is if I understand you clearly, is making the vision concrete. It's not just taking it from the abstract sense down to the concrete level where we see it, we feel it, we touch it, we understand it at a deeper level beyond just mere words.
Yeah, and the importance of that is because when it's at that level, now we can put that on.
Yeah.
Now we can get ourselves sparked to looking at understanding what that life is going to be like to live at a deeper level than we can when we just see the visual of it.
Yeah. 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 So wow, dynamic vision. Like I've learned a lot, and I trust my audience has learned a lot. Earlier on, I asked you about imposter syndrome, and you did give us a framework for imposter syndrome. However, what I would like to is to follow up on that imposter syndrome. For a lot of us, we are afraid of failing, right? There's this fear of failure. If I do this, it might not work. If I try this, it might not work. If I've tried so many tips out there, right? This is just another tip. He's telling me about, oh, this is another coaching advice. Or all the other ones, like you mentioned, I've spent so much money on coaching and all those things. Those ones didn't work. This one is just another one geared to, to take my money and all those stuff and all those things. I don't blame those persons because they've suffered, their hands have been burnt, and they're afraid to get their hands burnt again. What would you say to address that fear?
That's a great, and I've experienced that myself. And I've been at that point of going, this is all BS, man. These people, all they want is my money. I'm not getting anything result wise and this and that and everything else. And because of that is probably the main reason why I guarantee any client that I serve, I guarantee them results. Now, we don't know the full results till we do the vision, but I guarantee when we get done, they're going to go, man, I learned so much and my business has changed and my life has changed and everything else. Because so often we focus solely, like we have blinders on, we're focusing only on the business growth and the revenue. But when we start bringing into it the other areas of our life and through working together, when those start opening up, we start realizing it more. But here's what I would tell anybody. If you're looking for somebody to assist you with it, very quickly you'll be able to assimilate somebody who's telling you they have your plan and somebody who's telling you, I have no idea what the hell your plan is, but I got a roadmap and I'm really good at helping you find it.
Yeah.
And then look for somebody that guarantees their results. If they're not guaranteeing their results, I wouldn't, that would be somebody I would shy away from.
Yeah, I think when it comes to learning, I think the best types of teachers and the best types of coaches, someone who has done it for themselves and someone who has done it for a lot of persons repeatedly.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I look for. Yeah, like how did this get to you? Like we're talking about, if I grew up without the conditioning I had, I wouldn't have the business I have today.
Yeah.
If I grew up with conditioning, like somebody who was very wealthy and stuff, I wouldn't know any of the stuff that I know as far as because I wouldn't have had to go through what I had to go through to get to that other side.
Yeah, I feel like it's different if someone who was maybe an addict, right? Maybe an addict of alcohol or cocaine, right? And they finally recovered and they quit the drug or the addiction, and now they are at a point where they are helping other people quit their addiction, right? It's different from someone who is, well, they are kind, they are generous, but they've never gone through that stuff. They've never felt what it means to to have the will to change, but then your body tells you something different. Like it's different. Like I'm not saying that person, the person with that hasn't gone through the evil before, cannot help someone, but I'm just saying that it's just different. And for you, you've gone through it and you understand it well.
Yeah, and one of the ways I'll tell you that conditioning plays out is you ever be out somewhere and you have a spark of an idea and it's like, oh my God, this is huge. And then you get to a point, maybe it's a day, maybe it's a week down the line where it's time to take an action on that and you talk yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Taking the action.
Yeah.
That's programming going on right there. Because take that action is going to go against what our programming tells us. And so here's the other thing with, for me, for a long time, it took me forever to institute changes. And it's because I was going it on my own. Once I understood the subconscious, once I understood the mindset, once I, understood the neuroplasticity of the brain, all the stuff like that I've studied over decades. And then I found somebody who could help me do it. All of a sudden, man, they could point out things like boom, 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 as far as like, oh, that's your conditioning talking. Oh, that's your subconscious, your programming coming out. And I had no idea of it because it feels so natural to think that way. So going it alone is very hard for us to even see that our programming is playing out in our actions and the way our perceptions and the way we see things.
Yeah, and that's I think that's like the first step, because you have to know that, okay, there's something wrong with my programming in order for you to even say, okay, how do I change it? How do I rewire it? If not, you're just going to keep living life and making the same mistakes as if they're normal.
Yes, but unless we're aware of it, unless we have things that are helping us to bump against it, and maybe even somebody there to help us identify that's what's happening, that spark of that idea that could change business overnight, we just somehow dismiss that and don't take that action because now all of a sudden when it's time to take the action, it seems silly.
Yeah.
That's programming. It's even programming telling us we have to check all the boxes every single day of all the actions we're going to take to be successful. That's programming guiding us down that avenue.
Yeah. And what I would want to say is that programming in itself is not necessarily bad or good. It just depends on if the programming is helping us towards our goals, or if it's working against us. Did you get that?
Yeah. I don't add judgment to our programming, good, bad, things like that. But I have to look at programming and go, okay, is this serving me or is it limiting me?
Yeah.
And the part of it that's limiting me is the part I need to shift.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, when we even rewire the subconscious and the programming, what we're actually doing is writing another set of program that will serve us.
Yeah, my limiting program that I have to work hard, to be worthy of anything I achieve, I had to shift that to opportunities continuously show up for me. Clients continuously show up. Opportunities, good things, rewards, like it easily shows up in my life. And that's what I experienced today.
Yeah. It's amazing how time flies when, like, I feel like, this, like, we could go on and on. There's just so like, this is a topic that, that gets to be discussed on a deeper level. We've not even touched the surface of this topic. The question I want to ask is, if a content creator is listening right now, someone who has a content business is listening right now, and they're feeling completely stuck, right?
Yes.
What's the first thing they should do today to change that? The first step, just the first step, right? Not multiple steps, just the first step they should take today.
One of the things, and it's going to go against programming, I'll tell you that right now, but the first thing to do is halt. Stop taking the actions. Stop burning yourself out. Stop working exhaustively. And take a little bit of time, grab a pad of paper and a pen, and write down what that end line, what that end game is that you want to achieve. What's the reason you want to achieve it? What does it look like? What's it feel like? And start putting those things down. Because once you even have that, it'll start leading to different actions than the exhaustive burnout mode.
Yeah.
If something from today's episode resonated with you and you're feeling stuck, here's your chance to break through. Joseph is offering a free call. Here you can discuss the podcast topics and get personalized guidance to move forward. Just head over to coachwithjoey.com to book your section. That is coachwithjoey.com to book your section. The link will be in the podcast show notes. That's it for today's episode of Wisdom Journey. If you found this insightful, helpful, and you learned a lot from this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your respective podcast listening platform. It really helps other persons discover the show. Yeah, keep creating, keep learning, and most importantly, keep sharing your journey. You never know who needs your wisdom today. You see what I did there? Until next time, stay inspired and keep going.